Hi, I'm Joanne Banko. Today I want to show you how to make a custom tool roll. Perfect for storing something like you see here. This is specifically made for a wrench set, but stick with me because I think if you follow through on this, you'll get some ideas for making an item like this for using for other tools as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the project. These are commonly found and a very common way to store this type of tool. So I thought it would be really fun to make one for my husband that would be customized, personalized, and suited perfectly for the wrench set that he particularly had. So you're going to start out by gathering the tools that you want to make the actual tool roll for. You'll see why it's called a roll in a minute here, but you want to gather those tools and you're going to measure each one because you're going to want to create a custom pattern. So let me tell you a little bit how I created that custom pattern. I measured the tools, and then I measured the width of each one, the maximum width, and added a 1/2 inch. That's going to determine my spacing for my pockets. Obviously, you need to know how many you're making as well. But then I also measured the length. And what I did is I subtracted 2 inches from my tallest tool and subtracted 1 inch from my shortest tool. That just makes it easy to get them in and out and still see what the sizes are that you're doing. Once I did that, then I needed to make the pattern piece that would form the base piece, which I'm calling the inside, and then the lining, essentially what it is, or the outer piece. So it's the outside piece that we need for that. And of course I chose some, kind of masculine themed fabrics with the duck cloth. You want a really firm, sturdy fabric. And then the ripstop nylon that I chose, partially because it just looked really cool, but it's also very, very durable. You find this commonly used for camping equipment, stuff sacks, they call them, things like that that are made for durability, and yet it's lightweight and it's also waterproof. So waterproof means it's also going to be water resistant. So let me tell you about what you need supplies-wise. Once you get your pattern made, once you get that customized for the tools you're going to put in it, and let me stop for a second and just say, think about this. What other tools could you possibly have? Maybe you've got a special set of cooking tools. Maybe you've got artist brushes, makeup brushes, sewing tools. All of this will work if you follow the same formula. So I'm going to cut one inside piece, I'm going to cut one outer piece, and then I'm going to cut 2 pocket pieces. Again, once I've figured out the measurements of the width and the amount that I need for my pockets, I can mark those out. Let's talk also about the depth though. What I did is I simply added 3 inches to the height of my tallest tool. Now that's up to you. You could change that measurement. I just wanted to make sure that was completely covered. Another option would be to maybe add a flap, and I want to show you how this rolls up, but for me personally, because this rolls very tightly and is secured with a type of hook and loop tape that has hook and loop on the same thing, you can pull that very, very tightly. So I don't risk losing any of those tools once that's tightened up. But some of them that you see in store-bought type item will also have a flap. So you can see how nice that is where those openings are, where those tools actually slip in and out. So you do need some of that special type of hook and loop tape, and then a strong thread. You also need a jeans needle because that's a strong needle. It's going to help penetrate and pierce that. So let's go ahead and let's go through the steps of how I actually made this. So I took the 2 pocket pieces, sewed it right sides together, turned it, and now I've got ready for stitching my pocket. So that's what I've already done. I chose to make just a little bit of a decorative accent here, so you could sew straight lines, you could skip that part, but I think you'd agree it looks pretty cool when you've got that extra monogram and it's accented by some stitching. So I've already done that. I've already straight stitched my pockets, forming those pocket pieces, but it's open on every other edge because you'll see that our final step will actually be to sew that right sides together and completely enclose that. But I want to talk a little bit about the pockets first. You could do what I did on this one, which is just simply stitch that 2 or maybe even 3 times to really reinforce that. Remember, this is the type of item that's going to get a lot of wear and tear, and that edge, especially up at the top, is going to get a little bit of pull. So I'm going to head over to the machine now. I'm going to take my second piece that I've only stitched singly, and I want to show you how I make the bar tacks. So the bar tacks on my original sample were done with the buttonhole foot. And I've just simply taken a button, a small button, put that in the foot. I'm going to take my regular presser foot off. I'm going to snap this one on. Nope, wrong way. You should always be able to read the letter of your presser foot when you're putting it on. That's your tip to tell you whether you've got that foot on the right way or the wrong way. Because some of your feet tend to look the same almost on both ends. That could get confusing. I've put my thread underneath, all right, and I'm going to stitch this from the top edge. I want to go this way. Okay, I'm going to line that up. I've got markings on my buttonhole foot. I'm going to go ahead and select a built-in bar tack. So I've got a special bar tack built into this machine. It's designed to work with the buttonhole foot. I just simply line that up, and it's going to form a perfect buttonhole bar tack once I get that lever down. So while that's stitching, let me give you some other options. All right, maybe you don't have a bar tack built into your machine. Not a big issue. Really what this is a reinforced zigzag. So it stitches forward and backward a few times and then stitches a very narrow, short zigzag right over the top of the straight stitching. So it's just, again, reinforcing that. It's tying it off. Okay. And you can see right there I've got a bar tack. Okay, let me just slide over, do another one, set that down. I'm just, again, lining up where the beginning of that stitch is, and it's very quick and easy to do these bar tacks. Now, we would do that all the way across. We would have that all completely secured. And then I'm going to show you how to do this monogram. So I'm going to take off the buttonhole foot, and I'm just going to do this today with a regular presser foot, but normally I would do these monograms with a monogram foot. There's a wider foot that I can use for that. I've got one already built in, so I'm going to go to sewing, go to my character decorative stitches, and I'm going to go to my pocket. Oh, I guess I didn't build that in. Let's take a look and see if I've got that in another place there. Okay, so let's go ahead and build that monogram then. I'll just do 2 letters today. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do 3. All right, and I'm going to get my scrap fabric here. You can see the one that I've already done. You can choose to add letters in between if you want to. But what I really want you to see here is when we stitch this out, we don't know what the spacing is until we actually select those letters. So this is going to show you how to space that perfectly on your actual project. So the first thing you do, program it in, choose your letters. Again, decide if you want a period in between each one. That's usually a good idea when you're doing a monogram with the first initial, the middle initial, and the last initial, because it's easier to differentiate between them. But again, you know, it's personal preference. Monograms are another whole story that we could go on and on about, but there are lots of different ways and lots of different preferences for that. But I'm going to stitch that out on a scrap. That's going to tell me how much spacing that my monogram is going to take up. Now I've got that stitched out. I want to put that on this piece. Okay, so I know I have a center line here. I'm going to mark that and define that a little bit better. When I stitch out my line of lettering, I've got a center point here as well. So I could measure that, or a common way that I do it, I just fold it wrong sides together. I match the 2 ends where the stitching stopped. I mark that, and then I open this up. And if you can see what I'm doing here, I'm deciding where I want to stitch that, and I'm lining that up so the center of what I stitched measures up with the center of where I want to stitch this, that tells me where my starting point needs to be. So if you see, that's where my start stitching. Ending doesn't matter. So now I can place that right underneath the presser foot, and I can be assured that my monogram is going to be centered on there. So while I'm stitching this, let me just, let's think about this. What are other times that you might use the beautiful built-in lettering on the machine? You might want to make messages to customize your gifts. That's one of my favorite things to do. And if you've got this built in, we've got embroidery capabilities where we do that a lot, but you have that on the sewing side of the machine in many machines. And it gives you the opportunity to customize, add names, add words, add initials, whatever you like. The tricky part is really learning where to line it up. So hopefully this trick will show you how to line that up. And that's just about finished. Okay, cut the thread. And then let me show you, that's how it finishes, perfectly aligned. So our very last step would be to place these pieces right sides together. I'm going to go back to my sewing mode with my regular straight stitch. I would have all these layers either pinned or clipped. Clips work really well. Start at this end. And again, I added a 1/2 inch seam allowance to this pattern. I might not have mentioned that at the very beginning. You can use a 1/4, you can use a 1/2, whatever you want. Backstitch a little bit at the end. I'll save some time there without doing that. You're gonna go all the way around. You wanna make sure that you leave an opening at the top. Of course, you're gonna pivot at each corner. You're gonna sew all the way around there. On the opposite side, you're gonna add in your piece of hook and loop tape. Sew up to that edge. And let's take a look at the finished tool roll. Be sure to visit the website. You will find complete instructions for making your own custom tool roll.